I now recognize Mr. Carter. Or you went already. Okay. I now recognize Mr. Magaziner, the ranking member for counterterrorism, the gentleman from Rhode Island, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for your leadership and to the men and women who work under you, who keep our nation safe every day. You have our gratitude. And to Ranking Member Thompson and Chairman Green as well for calling this hearing. The Director of National Intelligence has assessed that racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists present the greatest terror threats to our country. And I believe in your opening statements, our witnesses verified that assessment today. Racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists present the greatest terror threats to our country. Yet, as I've been listening, not one member from the other side of the aisle has focused any of their remarks or questions on what the DNI and our witnesses have identified as the greatest terror threat to our country. So I'm going to spend my time today talking about this and asking you about it. Because we know that over the last 5 years, more Americans have been killed on our soil by racially motivated extremists than any other type of terror. We saw it in El Paso, Texas, where a racially motivated extremist killed 23 people in an attack explicitly targeting Latino and immigrant communities. In Buffalo, New York, where a racially motivated extremist targeted the black community, killing 10 people. Allen, Texas, where an extremist espousing anti-Semitic and neo-Nazi ideology shot up a mall, killing 8 people. Over the past decade, 145 Americans killed on U.S. soil in domestic extremist attacks, primarily racially and ethnically motivated. The FBI currently has 2,700 open domestic terrorism cases, and anti-government extremism poses a growing threat as well. We just learned the horrifying news that an associate of a January 6th defendant pleaded guilty to conspiring and plotting to murder 37 FBI employees in Chattanooga for the admitted purpose to retaliate against government conduct. And of course, in the wake of the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack in Israel, we are seeing a significant rise in anti-Semitic and Islamophobic violence across the country. The Anti-Defamation League reports that anti-Semitic incidents of harassment, vandalism, and assault have increased by 388% over the same period last year. Just this week, a Michigan man pleaded guilty to threatening to commit a mass shooting against the Jewish community. The Council on American Islamic Relations has similarly reported a 216% increase. And of course, we are all familiar with the tragic death of a 6-year-old Palestinian American who was horrifically killed in a hate crime a few weeks ago. So, given that this has been identified as the greatest terror threat facing our country, I'd like to give each of you an opportunity, starting with Director Wray, to talk about specifically racially and ethnically motivated extremism. What is the nature of this threat, and what does the FBI need from Congress in order to meet it?
So first, a point of clarification. And when we talk about the greatest threat to the homeland, the greatest threat to the homeland is lone actors or small groups, typically radicalized online using easily accessible weapons to attack soft targets. And that group of lone actors includes both, as you rightly say, domestic violent extremists, as well as, though, that's the clarification, homegrown violent extremists who are individuals here who are inspired by foreign terrorist organizations. So that's what we call it at the highest threat level. Second, when it comes specifically on the domestic violent extremism side, domestic terrorism side, it is the case that over the last several years, the most lethal activity has been conducted here in the homeland by racially motivated violent extremists in terms of the most lethality. And then there's a second category, which you also noted in your question, which is anti-government, anti-authority violent extremists, which is distinct, sometimes overlaps a little bit, but it's distinct from the racially motivated.
Is that, for example, what we saw on January 6th, the anti-government or inspired by?
That would be one variation on it, but so would the violence